friends, and welcome to episode 106 of Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I am super excited to be here with you today. Did You Bring the Hummus is a podcast for all things vegan. Episodes post every Monday on your favorite podcast app. Before we get started, I have one very important question for you. Did you bring the hummus? Do you love the podcast? Want to help me keep it going? Visit the Support the Podcast tab on my website to learn more. Join me on alternating Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern for an hour of meditation. Sign-up options include individual sessions, a monthly subscription, or a 10-session package good for 6 months. I have joined forces with Jennifer Shlomovich of The Confident Vegan on a new project, That Vegan Morning Show, which airs on YouTube every Monday at 7 a.m. Eastern. Join our mailing list and get a free recipe ebook of some of our favorites. Today, I am joined by Angela Crawford, Ph.D., psychologist, vegan educator, and author of The Vegan Transformation, A Journey to Heal Yourself and the World. She holds a doctorate in clinical psychology and previously worked as a psychotherapist for 25 years, empowering clients toward greater holistic well-being. A speaker and teacher about the psychological benefits of veganism, she is passionate about the power of personal transformation to create a more fulfilling and purposeful life and a kinder, healthier world. Angela and I first connected over a year ago and made a plan to sit down together when she was ready to talk about the book. We recorded this back in March, so her book wasn't out yet, but it is now. You'll want to own this book and probably a few extras to share as needed. I'll include a link in the show notes. Don't let ordering the book distract you from the interview. I'll wait. Hey, Angela, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited that you are here. So tell me, Angela, about your vegan journey.
I love sharing about that because if you talked to me many years ago, it was something I could not have ever imagined. But then here I am. So it started for me with first becoming vegetarian. And that was late 2006, early 2007. I happened to see a program on a PBS station that it was a segment about workers in a meat processing plant. It just came up on the news show I was watching, and it didn't show any gory details of meat processing or slaughter or anything like that. It just highlighted the workers, who many of whom were immigrants, and in this particular setting, they were having a lot of injuries, and yet being coerced to keep working and not take time off or get treatment, or they were at risk of losing their jobs, which were, often they felt financially vulnerable and not having many other opportunities. And I happened to work in a pain management program at the time, so that probably made me more empathetic to the plight of injured workers. Mm-hmm. And even though I had never worked with a worker from that industry, but I still had this empathy for what they were going through. And I felt like this is just my feeling about their employer was this was a very unjust system. And I was like, I'm not sure I want to be supporting this through my choices. And I want to look into eating more vegetarian or plant-based. And, very quickly, I did start to have this thought in my mind, well, if you don't like how the workers are treated, what do you think about what happens to the animals? And it's interesting. I don't think I'd ever really thought about that in any depth before, or at least I don't remember. And, that just really struck me. And the very next day, I went to a bookstore. I bought a vegetarian cookbook and I tried out a recipe, which first in and of itself is just pretty amazing because I was not a cook. I just cooked the same things over and over again. It was more comfort, convenience food, repetition. And, I made this lasagna that was spinach, red pepper, and artichoke lasagna with all these colors and flavors. And I had to buy pots and pans, and it was just like, wow, it was just this adventure. And it went from someone who hated to cook to like, wow, this was kind of cool. And, everybody liked it. And so I just started trying new recipes and buying, books that help me understand the nutritional aspects of thriving with a vegetarian. I wasn't yet ready to think vegan, but, with a vegetarian lifestyle, and, what did I need to eat nutritionally to have my nutritional bases covered? And then I just started reading all these books about the ethics and about not as much about the environment then, that came up more later, but definitely the ethics and the health and nutrition aspects of thriving with a plant-based lifestyle. And I knew pretty early on that probably going vegan was the thing to do, but I guess it took a while for me to be ready to fully take that on. Um, Sort of being an introvert and not necessarily liking to kind of, I don't know, communicate things about, ways of being different to people, even though I am independent. I don't know, it took a while to be able to handle those social situations. And first to just say, okay, I'm not eating meat anymore, and to kind of speak that. And then later, when it came to, after enough reading and research over the years in inner growth, where I was starting to listen to my own inner voice and trust it more, I finally knew 6 years ago that I needed to become vegan. And I finally just took these final steps. I read the 30-Day Vegan Challenge by Colleen Patrick Gaudreau, and just kind of use that as a tool to help me break through those last little barriers that were standing in my way of doing what I knew in my heart was the right thing to do, and really going fully vegan and not having any animal products in my diet or in my life the best I could anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, can I just say that I'm very impressed by the first vegetarian meal you ever cooked. Mine, mine was pasta covered in like half a block of mozzarella cheese. I didn't cook at all, and I didn't know what I was doing in the kitchen. That was the best I could offer. Following a recipe in a book was like beyond what I was capable of. So
Wow.
very impressive. This lasagna with all these vegetables in it. Well done.
Thank you. I was kind of impressed myself at the time. Thanks.
And I too kind of had well, first going back to what you first said about watching that program and seeing how terribly the workers were treated. That's one of the things that so many pre-vegans will say things like vegans don't care about people. They only care about animals. And if they would just stop and take a moment and look at what's happening in the slaughterhouses, in the factory farms, they would see that people suffer too. And the people in their lives suffer when they go home after just killing innocent beings all day long. Like, think about, well, you're a psychologist. Think
Yeah.
about like what that does to someone.
Yeah.
And what do you do with all of that cruelty and just sadness when you get
Yeah.
home?
No, it's so true. And, certainly research with slaughterhouse workers show that especially those in certain roles in the slaughterhouse have higher rates of domestic violence and, alcohol or substance use. I think it has to take a psychological toll, and probably more so the more direct their involvement in the killing process
Mhm.
is. And yeah, I just think, for most of us, this is not work any of us, the average person would want to consider if they had a choice
Right.
financially.
Yeah.
Um, and there's other impacts on humans too, obviously, those that live near slaughterhouses and have the waste products from the slaughterhouse and the fumes and other.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like our hearts can have space for humans and animals at the
Mhm.
same time, that it's not an either or.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if we could focus on not consuming and using animals, then we take away situations where humans have to be part of that and doing those jobs and harming themselves and potentially people around them. It kind of, to me, seems like a win all around.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Yes, and it's sort of related to what you're saying is the research that shows too that how we treat animals and humans is very interconnected.
Mm,
So, compassion for animals is actually an indicator of our emotional, mental health, and, our ability to kind of feel caring for others.
mhm.
So I think it is so interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so well, that just made me think of a chapter in your book.
Yeah.
Um, but so we're here to talk about many things, but mostly your new book, The Vegan Transformation, which I'm so excited about for you, for me, for everybody in the world. Um, and the forward written by the amazing, beautiful, wonderful, all the amazing words I can think of, Victoria Moran. Ah,
Mhm.
I loved reading her little forward there for you. So
Yes,
beautiful.
it was. She captured it in a way that I'm like, wow, I wish I could have explained it that well. She just pulled the essence of it together in that forward in a way that was just beautiful. But of
Yeah,
course, she is the author of like 14 books. So she has a way with words
she
and
does.
many years of experience in this vegan space as well. So she's
Yeah,
certainly a mentor of mine.
yeah, I love her. So looking through your book, the first thing that jumped out to me was, so you have kind of these 7 things that you kind of go through as you're going through the vegan transformation. And maybe I should take a step back and ask you, what do you mean by vegan transformation?
That's a good question. I myself, on a personal level and professional level, have always been fascinated by transformation. I always have worked on my own inner growth and my own both spiritual and personal journey. And then, of course, in my work as a psychologist and for many years a psychotherapist, watching my clients transform parts of their life by making these changes that I guess you could compare it to that caterpillar becoming a butterfly, that sometimes it goes beyond just simple change to something amazing and even magical that makes us feel and see the world differently. And for me, becoming vegan was the biggest transformation of my life and the most impactful transformation of my life, going from someone who didn't realize how the food I ate and certain things that I did were affecting sentient beings to suddenly seeing that, feeling that,
Mhm.
and feeling freed that I didn't have to participate in that anymore, at least while it's hard to be perfect in this world about that, that to the best of my ability. And there was something so freeing. And I had all these changes, like becoming more authentic, finding my voice as someone, who definitely identifies as an introvert, and also kind of shy in certain situations, to this like being so passionate for me that I'm willing to be out there speaking, that I, was willing to suddenly have a website and a blog and a YouTube channel and then write this book. So that's my transformation. And also, health and empowerment over my health. And, I didn't have major health problems before, but I definitely see how, like, it's now been 18 years that I've been vegetarian and 6 years plus vegan, that my health is in a better place than I'm pretty sure it would have been otherwise,
Mhm.
with a strong family history of heart disease. And so as I met other vegans, I saw them having transformations as well. They would share, how they found a sense of purpose, or they felt more true to themselves. And some of them had dramatic health transformations. So, the vegan transformation was an exploration of how does being vegan, or that journey to veganism, affect us on a mind, body, spirit level. There had been a lot of research more on the physical parts of how
Mhm.
we can be affected by a vegan lifestyle and diet, but not so much about how are we affected in our heart and our mind and our body and our spirit. And I wanted to capture that. And so to me, what came through in my interviews and surveys with dozens of vegans was this, what I called the vegan transformation, this kind of spiritual and emotional change, and physical as well, that people described. And not everybody was at the same, but there were a lot of overlapping experiences.
That's so interesting. As you're saying that, I kind of was in the back of my mind reliving mine. So I had severe self-esteem issues, like zero confidence, really felt like, I had a lot of work to do with myself, and trauma from the past and all of that that really got in the way. Never stood up for myself, just kind of took whatever came my way. And then I came home one night and checked the mail, and I had an issue of PETA's Animal Times in my mailbox. And I don't know why it came to me. I don't remember filling out anything that would have brought it my way, but it was addressed to me. And I read it cover to cover. And the story of a downed cow is what made me go vegetarian overnight. And it still kind of bothers me that I didn't make the full connection to dairy and just go vegan right away. But immediately I was like up physically sick all night because I'd eaten animals all day long. And I was so devastated by what I had done. Every meal, every choice that I bought something made of leather or whatever, every one of those like just really broke my heart. And I found that for myself, I still couldn't stand up for myself. I still couldn't have a voice of for me. But when it came to saying, "No, I don't eat that anymore," or "I'm vegetarian now," and just expressing that and trying to help people understand why I was doing it, then I had a voice and I was able to express why I was making these changes and what it meant to me and what it meant to the animals. And it was incredible that I could stand up for them, even though I couldn't stand up for myself. Yeah. And then
Wow.
going vegan just really sent me even further.
Now you have this amazing podcast
Thank you.
and that vegan morning show. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah. It it is a powerful thing that, people who come to veganism from really from all angles, maybe you don't realize what you're in for, and it's so much bigger and more beautiful and amazing. I tell people all the time it's the most beautiful way to live life, and I feel like I knew even though I didn't there was just an innate knowing. Like now that I'm vegan, I'm like I was destined to be vegan. This was part of my life's path and purpose. And did you find that in your research that people kind of felt like, "Oh, I've like found my way home?"
yeah, actually, someone did use sort of similar words to that. That being vegan was like coming home for them, and I think something you've probably heard people say before too that came up again and again is like, the only regret is I wish I'd done it sooner.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just it's just interesting how freeing it is, and I think maybe in part is that it ties together so many things that we care about. Obviously the not eating animals and realizing that this is a compassionate way to live is so beautiful because most of us are compassionate, and we've just learned to compartmentalize it and not
Mhm.
realize how we're not living it. We're so conditioned that we need to eat animals, and or maybe even disconnected from the fact they are animals, and
Right.
so it just so when you suddenly realize, yeah, like this is happening, and yet I can make a choice, that I'm in a situation where I can make a choice to not participate in that. There's just such freedom in that, and I feel for
Yes.
many of us it does feel so deeply aligned once we make that connection.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Knowing what is happening and knowing that you have removed yourself from it as much as you can. Like you said, it's not possible to be perfect, and that's kind of in the definition of veganism, right? As far as possible and practicable. So of course that doesn't mean like, oh, it's Friday, I feel like a cheese pizza. It's like I need this thing, and it was this medicine, it was tested on animals. But I can't be my best self if I'm not taking this medication, like those types of things. It's
Exactly, or that my
yeah.
computer might have parts in it that I don't fully know what
Right.
all they are, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we try our best, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more we learn, and that's the thing, like, I went vegetarian in 2001, I went vegan in 2015, and I'm still learning every day. There's always something that you're like, "Oh, no, I didn't know that." But then once you know it,
Yes,
then you make a shift, and you can
yeah,
stop buying the thing or doing the thing or whatever it is that you've uncovered. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you start to find the different products and other things that are, cruelty free and vegan, and
Hmm.
you learn different ways to adapt.
Yeah. And it can feel really big, as most changes in life do, right?
Mm.
But I find that when we're coming at it with that big why, that it's not just about us, it's beyond us, uh, it's so easy. I stop using brands. I like something I've loved forever and ever. If I find out they've been bought by a company and now stuff's being tested on animals within that company, I'm out. I find something else. And it doesn't mean a thing. I just move on and it's so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think when you've made that connection really strongly, that it is easy. It just overrides all, other considerations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. When I was looking through the beginning of your book, kind of looking at the chapters, so you've got these kind of 7 pieces of the transformation. And I really appreciated, because it is about a vegan transformation, not a plant-based
Mhm.
transformation. I appreciated that health is number 6.
Mm.
That you look at, like, that finding your why, the making the deeper connections and finding purpose and all of that stuff comes before feeling like I'm taking charge of my health, because that really is the vegan piece of it, So
Mhm.
I just, was that like a conscious thought?
Yeah, when I was first exploring my book and doing the research, I think I had at least one person say to me, well, if you had the title be plant-based instead of vegan, it'd have broader appeal to the non-vegan audience. But I knew that in terms of both my own transformation and in terms of the people I was interviewing, even though some of the people I interviewed were whole food plant-based vegans, they were still vegan.
Mhm.
You know, they weren't on, they may have started, some of them might have started for health reasons, but pretty much everybody had connected to the animals, you
Mhm.
know, that came through in the survey, that they all said compassion for animals was part of why, they no longer would go back to eating animals again.
Yeah.
So for myself and for the people I interviewed, the being vegan was a and connecting with all the pieces, but particularly the animals, was just a core piece of the transformation. Like, yes, you could write just about the health transformation and, for plant-based, and that still is deeply meaningful.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was really about something about the connection and the values alignment. The values alignment came out to be the foundational transformation that
Yeah.
in fact, after I wrote the book, I kind of came up with an acronym that I could use when I speak about it, even though I didn't use it in the book itself. And the acronym is values. And
Mm.
values only has 6 letters in it, but values is the core transformation of the 7 transformations. And then each of those letters, I kind of used them to describe a different component of the other 6.
Okay.
But I won't go too much into that here. But the values were that core foundational transformation where people suddenly, like what came up for the majority of people that I interviewed or surveyed was that now I finally feel like I'm living fully in alignment with my values. I feel like a weight has been lifted that I didn't know was there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the foundation, and that led to all the other kind of changes that people experienced.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, think about how many of us as children, as adults, depending on when we came to veganism, how many of us have said, I love animals, and then eaten them
Yeah.
shortly after or the same day, And so that deep within you, every time you see, a dog or a cat or whatever, a rabbit, you're so like moved by how sweet they are, how cute they are, how much you love spending time with them, whatever that is. And you're disconnected from who ends up on your plate the minute that you go, oh, they're the same and
Yeah.
now I'm not eating them. That connection, that alignment is so powerful.
Mhm.
It changes everything. Transformation is the absolute right word.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole shift in our perspective and the way we see the world.
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously, that can be challenging sometimes too, because then we feel different from people around us that don't
Oh, yeah.
have that same connection, haven't made that connection yet. But at the same time, I would never trade it anyway, though, even though it does make me different. It's
Yeah.
just like it's freeing and it's like you said, beautiful. So so yeah, that values alignment, I think, and it's our values of compassion. But the beautiful thing about veganism is that it is a win-win. As so many people that I interviewed discovered, that even if I went vegan for the animals, wow, my own health improved,
Mhm.
in some way. And then some that did initially go vegan for health reasons, wow, I awoke to really realize compassion for all sentient beings, and that's made it even more meaningful than it was when I was doing it just for
Yeah.
my own health.
Mhm.
So I think it all can interconnect. And now that we know that veganism also helps our planet, it's just like it feels like a win-win on every level, which is makes it even more beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah. So the title of the chapter around living your values is The Courage to Live Your Values. And like you were saying, it does make us different. We are a very small population across the world, and it does take courage. But when you're aligned with your values and you know in your heart that you're doing what's right for you, and if you ask me what's right for everybody, uh, it is courageous, but it like I said earlier, it feels easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it does for me too. And I think like for new vegans, the journey obviously can be different for different people, where some people it's an overnight transformation and it's just like they learn something, and then it's just like never again, they immediately make the change and it's just like no
Mhm.
looking back. And for others of us, myself included, it was more gradual. But at the same time, it reached a point where there was just I think at some point I had to ask myself, like, why would I compromise on this? Like, I know at this point this really matters to me. Why? There was just some point where there was no turning back and where I was ready to commit. And at that point, then it did feel easy. So I guess to just name for people that might listen who are newer, if it doesn't feel easy right away, don't give up, because
Yeah.
as you connect more and more with your own why and also keep learning tools for the how,
Mhm.
chances are there'll be this point where it does become easy.
Yeah. Did you find that you were having a lot of difficult conversations, that you really needed the courage at the beginning?
To some degree, yes. Even though always think of myself as a pretty independent thinker, and I've been willing to kind of go my own way on different things. At the same point, I also seem to value harmony. And so I discovered that there was a part of me that was more of a people pleaser than I had realized.
Mm.
And I think I'd been able to avoid that in certain issues before, but with eating, you're with people. You can't really, I mean, unless you eat alone all the time, you can't really avoid the topic. And so
Mhm.
I had to really practice speaking up in different situations where people maybe at first wouldn't understand. One example, especially once I became vegan and was avoiding all dairy products, people had gotten used to that I wasn't eating meat, but like my in-laws would have family birthday parties all the time and there'd always be a cake.
Mhm.
And that happened right after I became vegan, that all these, several birthday parties right in a row. And, and I was just like, and I was just still trying to like process everything. I'd just read the book Slaughterhouse, where the author interviews people who work in a slaughterhouse, and it describes really just the horrific ways the animals are treated, as well as what the workers went through, but really even more so like how they treated the animals. And I was watching videos and just really trying to get that connection of what happens to dairy cows and egg laying hens so that I got it on the same level that I'd gotten it with the meat.
Mhm.
You know, I had this, and trying to like then verbalize like why I didn't want to have the birthday cake. I wasn't going to launch into this whole diatribe at a birthday party about
Yeah.
about all this. I knew somehow that wasn't going to go over. So I, at first, just tried to avoid being in the situation. I think I brought something to eat myself and just kind of avoided the conversation. But I realized, okay, I've got to have this conversation. So later, like with my sister-in-laws, I spoke to them privately and
Mhm.
explained what was going on and why I'd made this choice. And they were supportive, but I'm sure for some people it comes a lot easier, and for others of us, we just, I don't know, we just kind of want to like kind of go along and not stand out necessarily.
Mhm.
And so I think for people with those kinds of personalities, it is more challenging than those who are like, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks. So, but it over time was really fine. I just found like when I would speak up with people from my heart, I was always pretty much supported.
Mhm.
So it was just more, um, maybe my own not wanting to kind of get into things too much. But I'm getting, over time, getting better. I mean, for me, like I personally do better when I'm, teaching or have something like my book, so those things help me to share about it more because I have a tool that helps me
Mhm.
to kind of share it with people in my life. And, people are supportive and curious. I wish they would all embrace it, but
Right.
that doesn't always happen right away.
No, unfortunately not. You make a really good point about that, you're coming to it from a place of love when because you're speaking from your heart and what means something and matters to you. And people are reacting in, at the very least, in like, okay, I understand why this matters to you, even if they're not feeling like they're going to make a change too. Because when I first went vegetarian, I was almost 21. And so I kind of thought I knew everything. And as we do when we're that age. And I wanted everyone to know what I had learned. And I bought every vegan shirt I could. And the one that I wore very frequently had a picture of the head of a cow who had been slaughtered, and the head was still hanging in the slaughter room, bleeding out, and next to it, the print said, "Would you like fries with that?" Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And how many friends do you think I made? And how often do you think people yelled at me over, said, "I understand why you're doing this." And
Yeah,
then as I
yeah,
got older, I thought, maybe I need a different approach. And I stopped wearing that shirt and
yeah.
I stopped kind of yelling at people. I had been on a date with a guy and we went to like a Greek festival, and I was still vegetarian, so I was eating cheese. And we were like on the line for food, and people were just scooping food onto your plates. And everyone was very friendly. And as I'm moving along looking for the spanakopita, a woman goes to spoon some chicken onto my plate. And I yank my plate back and I go, "I don't eat anything with a face." And this poor woman was horrified and also like, "Why is this girl yelling at me?" And then I stormed away, and the guy I was with was like, "We will find you your spinach pie. Let's go." And it just, she probably went home and was like, "Do you believe what this person said to me?" And if someone was like, "Oh, she was probably vegetarian or vegan," now this woman is like, "Oh, all vegetarians and vegans are insane or mean or whatever." But when they come to it like you did, like, "Hey, this is why it means something to me. This is what I'm doing." And you kind of take them off to the side, not announcing it in front of a big group of people, then they can kind of take it in and go, "Okay, and it's okay." Yeah, it's a lesson. I mean, there are gonna be people, pre-vegans, who listen to this or read your book, and they're gonna get out there, and they're gonna be in people's faces, and they're gonna want everybody to know. I think it's a rite of passage.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm all for the different ways that people share the message because I think for different situations, different personalities,
Mhm.
different callings. We all have different ways that we share it. And
Yeah.
I deeply admire people that are much more in the activist space for the tough work they do, so I feel like we all have our own way.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, I guess what I would say is I admire the work of Dr. Melanie Joy, who has written a lot of books about veganism, and then also Claire Mann, who wrote Vistopia. And I think both of them have really taught me a lot about communication over the years, as well as other things that I've learned just through my work. And I guess one thing that I have learned is that most of us, if we feel attacked or shamed, we shut down, and then learning can't really happen. And so, especially for people closer to us, just kind of realizing that it's understandable sometimes we just want to like lash out at people. I have certainly, even though like I'm describing myself as very passive, I've had my times of being more snarky or,
Mhm.
not so nice in sharing how I feel about something. And, I mean, that's okay. We're human. That happens. But I'm not sure that it ever led to change. Um, so, I feel that, especially for people we're closer to, if we can keep relationship going, one that honors us too and our needs, and our beliefs and our values, but also tries to meet other people where they are the best we can, and
Mhm. Yeah.
keep the door open for you, because you just never know when that person might come to you and be, hey, I want to know more now.
Yeah. Yep. You just keep planting those seeds, showing up as
Yes.
the vegan you are, and just demonstrating really just how amazing this life is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you just said there, I think is so important, that it's not only sharing the negatives of eating meat, but the many blessings of choosing not to and eating in the plant world.
Mhm. Yeah. So within this transformation, this vegan transformation, there's also a spiritual piece, right? That I think doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. Do you cover that in your book?
I do, yes. And that was one of the pieces that I'm not going to say it totally surprised me, but some of the things people said I wasn't necessarily expecting. I had a checklist on the survey of, some of the positive effects people might have, and spiritual deepening was one of the questions. And so a certain number of people endorsed that. It wasn't, everybody. But what came up a lot in the open-ended questions, was things along the lines of, I now feel interconnected with nature, with all sentient beings in a way that I had never felt before. And, there was also a lot of spiritual language too, things like, I can sense my intuition better than I could before. I feel more spiritually aligned. Um, there were some really beautiful quotes that I had, and I share in that chapter. I think it's chapter 8, connecting with our interconnected. I don't remember the name
Mhm.
of the chapter, but something about our interconnectedness. Let's see.
Yeah.
Discover your interconnectedness with life. And a lot of beautiful quotes and stories in that of how different people did experience that spiritual connection through leaving animals off the plate
Mhm.
and eating lighter, like they felt lighter because they were not eating the dense heaviness of animal flesh.
Yeah. Yeah. I I look here. This is not about me, but like I keep having these reactions to stuff that you're saying and stuff that I saw in your book. It is, and like I had told you before we started recording, I didn't even get a chance to read the whole thing, but and I'm going to, uh, I am so moved by so much within this because it so represents what I've gone through. And I had found, so my whole life from a spiritual perspective, I was hardcore atheist. Like even as a small child, my parents would take me to church every once in a while. It wasn't really a big thing in my family anyway. And I would be like, I'm so bored. I could tell you better stories at home. Like, let's just leave. And I just was not interested at all in religion. And then when I learned the word atheist and what that meant, I was like, ooh, that's me. It's like, I'm here now. And when I'm dead, that's it. It's over. Goodbye. And I felt so comfortable and confident in that. And then I became a philosophy major in college. And I was like, it's like, it doesn't matter if there's a God. I don't, because it doesn't affect my life. I'm still going to be a good person and live the way that I know is right for me and, how I think is good showing up in the world. So it doesn't matter. And then I went vegan and I started to feel really connected. Well, vegetarian started the connection to the kind of natural world, I guess. And then even more so when I went vegan. And then 5 years into my vegan journey, my soul cat died. And when Cookie died, I was no longer okay with this idea that once you're dead, nothing happens. And so I still don't feel like there's a God floating up in the sky. Like I don't have any feelings around that or thoughts around it. I connect to like kind of energy around and energy in nature. But yeah, like the fact that this perfect little cat lived on this earth for 16 years and then like that she just didn't exist anymore, I was not okay with that. So I needed to find something else. And so I started to listen when I was outside and feel kind of what was going on around me. And it deepened just my whole connection to everything. And I think I would have been super devastated anyway, losing Cookie, but being vegan and already having this idea of who other beings are just really made it where I had this whole like awakening, if you will.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And other people describe things like that. There was a whole spectrum of spiritual views in those that I surveyed and interviewed, and a few at least identified as atheists. But they still describe things that I would say fall into this broader definition of spirituality that
Mhm.
they might not label it as spiritual, but it still fits with this sense of being connected to something bigger, even if that something bigger is compassion, nature, the universe, their wise inner self,
Yeah.
how we are somehow connected to the whole tapestry of life in a way that in ways that we can't fully understand,
Mhm.
but it's a
Yeah.
mystery. It's yeah, and I think if you're not eating animals, it's like this block to seeing how you are connected with them is lifted, and now you can see that, I mean, many people feel that with their pets, obviously, but then this whole wider door opens up where you see that just all beings and all of life somehow is connected to me or,
Yeah.
to each one another.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was your favorite? Yeah, what was your favorite discovery as you went through all of these surveys and interviews, as you pulled it all
Mhm.
together?
That is so hard to answer. I loved a lot about it. I think because I mean, every chapter is a topic that would interest me probably even before I was vegan, but seeing how these things tie into being vegan, because these are all topics that might fall into categories of like spiritual growth and positive psychology, and
Hmm.
but yet something about being vegan accelerated or added to people's experience of these different things. And so one of them that I really loved was, gosh, I really liked a lot of things, but the chapter on compassion and realizing that when we open our compassion to all beings, even though it can be painful, it's also really good for us too. That
Hmm.
compassion is wired into us in a way that actually um, Darwin was, quoted in one of his books as saying it's stronger instinct for us than self-interest, which is
Mm.
very interesting,
Yeah.
because we often don't see the world as being that compassionate, and yet it
Right.
really is deeply wired into our very being, and we benefit when we actually show compassion. So for vegans, sometimes we have to learn how to navigate not having sort of an empathetic overload when we feel for the animals or the suffering
Yeah.
around us. So that's a journey of its own. But compassion is actually really good for us as well as good for the world. I think one other piece, there was a chapter on purpose. Many vegans found amazing purpose as here you
Mhm.
are doing this podcast, and
Yeah.
other people had found, so many different amazing ways they were bringing their gifts to share the vegan message and to have vegan businesses. And obviously we see that in the vegan business tribe that we're both part of.
Yep.
So there was a lot of that. And then this chapter on authentic fulfillment.
Mhm.
You know, being vegan is not going to necessarily guarantee that you're going to be happy all the time, just like any choice in life.
Yeah.
Um, and being vegan, you might sometimes have sadness or sorrow or different emotions because you've opened your awareness to certain suffering that maybe before was closed off, you weren't as aware of. But many of the people I interviewed described what I called authentic fulfillment, which is like this deeper sense of well-being that can transcend just being happy all the time. There'll be moments of happiness and there'll be moments of different other emotions, but it's this overall sense of like a deeper well-being that I'm living, I think it's tied into that values alignment and this sense of I'm living in a way that I feel good about. And, if I also add into that taking good care of myself, that will add to that authentic fulfillment. I do think it's very important that vegans
Mhm.
include self-care,
Yeah.
um, so that we can actually, do well ourselves. We're animals too.
Mhm.
We have limits and needs, but we'll also be more effective for, helping to invite others into this lifestyle, the more we're also including self-care. So I think that
Right.
authentic fulfillment is about a holistic lifestyle that, veganism can be part of.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I I love that. I think it's something that we often feel guilty about too when we think about self-care when as vegans where it's kind of like for example, if you find that being on social media and following lots of farm sanctuaries or people who do rescue or those activists and seeing kind of the horrific side of things so often we can feel like, well, we have to bear witness. One, so that we're honoring the animals, and two, so that we can have those real conversations when someone's actually interested, where you can really relay what is happening. But we can, especially because we've opened up that compassion, there's only so much of that you can take in before it destroys you. So you've got to build in whatever self-care. So if that means if it's the social media that's getting to you, that you take a break from it, it doesn't mean that you aren't showing up as the best vegan you can. In fact, you probably will show up even better when you're caring for yourself that way. But I find that for me, and I'm guessing probably for lots of vegans, there's almost a guilt about it to pull away.
There is, yes. I do address in the book, there's a chapter in it about this comes up in other chapters too, but there's one chapter that's really devoted to navigating the social and emotional challenges that
Mm,
vegans might experience. And, you know, there's some great teachers on this. Again, I'll refer to Dr. Melanie Joy and Claire Mann because both of them have done some really great work in helping vegans to prioritize self-care and to find a way to be an advocate in a sustainable way,
mm,
because that is just really important. And the more direct advocacy or activism someone does, the more important this becomes.
yeah,
Because I think as human beings, we're not wired to take in so much trauma, that we have a limit, as you were
right.
saying, to what our nervous system can really process and tolerate. And sometimes, rather than working through the feelings that are coming up for us, we might use anger as a way to kind of stay really motivated and to kind of feel
Hmm.
like, if I'm outraged and angry, that'll keep me going. But it's not a sustainable emotion long term for us. It takes a toll on us. And so learning different tools for how to acknowledge and process the feelings that come up and how ways to move them through the body. And there's a lot of different tools for that. I do suggest some in the book, but there's a variety of them that you can use. That just, whether it be different forms of meditation, emotional freedom technique, which is a tapping technique. There's just, and visualization of different sorts. There's a lot of different ways that we can move the body, the emotion through our body, and then kind of find the way to kind of cope or handle a situation once we've done that. And yes, limiting our exposure. I mean, if someone works directly in activism, obviously they're going to have more challenges, but they can still decide to limit the things they don't have to witness, because we don't have to see it over and over again. For most of us,
Right.
once we've seen it a certain amount, we've gotten it. So it's just kind of also knowing your own limits and allowing time for fun. I share a beautiful story in my book in the chapter on self-care for vegans. And it was an activist who, she shares her own journey of learning to include self-care and then later helping other vegans with it, because she called it despair repair. That just became, she realized, if I don't sometimes just have fun or relaxation or time with friends or things that lift me up, I'm not sustainable and I'm not effective.
Right.
you know so I think it's just kind of, maybe the biggest reminder for us will be that we're going to be more effective if we also include self-care. That might be our biggest motivation, to remember to do that and figure out what that means for us. But that does mean trying to eat some nourishing food, even if we enjoy some of the junk food, including some good vegetables and fruits.
Yeah.
Getting enough sleep, managing our stress, just and in having lots of good support. I think that is so important for vegans. Part of that being sustainable is certainly having a really good support network that includes some other vegans that really get where you're coming from and can hear you out when you need to vent or
Yeah.
just have fun with.
Yeah. It's so important, and something that I didn't realize how important it was until I found it. My mom went vegan a little while after me, and just having another person there who got it was so nice. And then as I started kind of building, did you bring the hummus? And then joining Vegan Business Tribe and being in this virtual room with people where I don't need to explain why the focus of the podcast is veganism. All these other like networking groups I have been part of, and even some that were called themselves heart centered or soul centered or whatever those words are that people use now, they would not get it. And I'd have to spend more time explaining why than telling them what I do. And when you're with the vegans, they know. So you don't have to talk about it. You can just have fun. You can just be there for each other. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. And that was actually one of the chapters too, is this connecting with a tribe. That came out as one of the things that people found really fulfilling and meaningful, was, and it's just connecting with these like-minded, like-hearted people that, as you say, there's this immediate connection. I mean, it was not until I became vegan that I connected with all these people across the globe, through, as you're saying, networking groups. And then when I did the interviews for my book, it just didn't matter where the person lived. There's this immediate connection of this shared value
Yeah.
that is just deeply meaningful. And it's a really wonderful thing.
It is. Yeah. To feel like someone who you've just met gets the core of you is just, it's unlike anything else.
Yes. Yes, it's so true. Yeah. And then we try to maybe share it with those around us. And as you mentioned, even in groups that might share our, similar spiritual or other values, heart-centered living values, it just sometimes, yeah, it just feels like there's a block there sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So your book, The Vegan Transformation. When does it come out?
It comes out April 22nd. So by the time this airs, it probably will be out.
Mhm.
Yeah, so super exciting. And it's available, I know, online through pretty much all the major booksellers. I saw it listed on several online booksellers from all the usual ones we know about and a few others that I hadn't really heard of.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, on my website, there is a book page that has a list of some of those booksellers if anybody needs some ideas of where to look.
Okay, awesome. Oh, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you, Angela. And thank you for spending the time that you did collecting those survey responses and interviewing vegans. It's a lot and it takes a lot of time to go through all of that and create this incredible book that you did. So, thank
Well,
you.
thank you. It
Yeah.
was it was it was an adventure, and I'm so excited now that I have a pre-copy in my hand that I just got today. So I'm so excited that it's here and coming into the world.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Well, Angela, I've got one more question for you. How does hummus show up in your life?
Well, I love hummus. And that was something that I liked before too, but love hummus with, seed crackers or carrots or celery. And I like a lot of different kinds. I just had a friend over last week and I bought a beaten lemon hummus
Ooh.
from a local place, and it was really, really good. So
Mm.
I love hummus, and I love that it, tastes good. And it's all these different flavors and it kind of nourishes you. It's awesome.
It is. It's like the perfect food.
Yes, it is. It goes with a lot of things.
That's right. Angela, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we got to sit down and chat together. And I hope that we maybe can find our way to meeting up in person. It's so rare that I'm kind of close enough
Yes,
to
yeah,
another
like it's not out
person.
of the realm, is it?
Yeah.
We're in neighboring states at least, I think.
Right.
That would be great. I would love
It would
that. And
be.
thank you so much for having me. The questions you asked were great and just really thought-provoking. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Welcome back. I want to hear your transformation story. Comment on any of the social media posts on the episode on Spotify, or just email me at info@didyoubringthehummus.com. To connect with Angela, visit her website, angelacrawfordphd.com, and follow her on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Angela Crawford, PhD. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're loving it, please give Did You Bring the Hummus a 5-star rating and leave a review. It's an easy way to keep supporting the show. Be sure to share these episodes with your friends. If you're finding something good here, they will too. If you're a vegan or know a vegan who would be a great fit for the podcast, follow the Be a Guest link in the show notes. Fill out the quiz and I'll be in touch. Get on my mailing list and stay up to date on all things Did You Bring the Hummus. Get more info on how you can sign up for a meditation, one of my programs, or to support the podcast via the links in the show notes. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Did You Bring the Hummus, and visit my website, didyouBringTheHummus.com, for more information about me, updates on what I'm working on, new podcast episodes, and all things vegan. Finally, I would love to hear from you. What do you need help with? Is there a topic you want to hear covered on a future episode? DM me on Instagram or send me an email at info@didyouBringTheHummus.com. Thanks for listening.